Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Living History series at the International Euphonium Summit. I'm your host, Nicholas Haffter von Heide, and with us today is Mr. Cole Cavanah for his, I think, fourth in series, maybe third, somewhere along
Yep.
there. I'll get the numbers right for the next one, especially. But welcome back, Cole.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So we're going to start with this. If you haven't listened to the podcast segment that's associated, about an hour and almost an hour and a half of amazing content talking about the low brass workshop that's coming up with
hmm
Joanna Ross Hersey and
hmm
Bethany Lash.
Or
I
Brittany Lash.
Brittany Lash. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I did right. I just couldn't read. So I have, yeah, I Cole and I have competing notes and uh, legible notes. That is. Um, so with that being said, we're gonna dive into Cole's uh, graduate studies, going into UCA, going from Stacy Baker's studio to Dr. Stacy Baker to Dr. Gail Robertson's, and that transition period. So let's dive into that. You're up.
Yep. Oh, yeah. I got my undergraduate degree at Morehead State University with Dr. Stacy Baker, and her and Gail Robertson have the symbiosis duo together. They have two albums together, and I know they do all kinds of other quartet work with RSVB Quartet and all of those things. Athena Brass Band and Brass Band of Battle Creek, so many other ensembles. But ultimately, I'd started my degree as music education, gone I think 3 semesters. So I think I changed right in the middle of my sophomore year. I changed to a performance degree, and Dr. Baker had told me that I need to go to grad school and I needed to become proficient on the trombone. So whenever I started doing the trombone then, but whenever it became time to go to graduate school, she'd more or less had given me the boot and said, "You're going to UCA to study with Dr. Robertson." She's like, this is kind of what you do." And I was like, "Oh well, that'll work." I had gone, I had been to UCA twice before I had started here as a student. I was a junior at Morehead State, and I went. I think it was during the low brass workshop actually, or it was just during another residency that they had. But I was I was visiting at UCA, and Dr. Jerry Young was a guest here. So not only did I get to spend some time with Gail Robertson and get some lessons with her and meet her studio, but I also got a lesson with Jerry Young, and I got to play in his master class, which as a visiting student that wasn't even part of the studio, that was pretty big for me. I was like, this place just let me participate in this big event they had, and I don't even go here. So that was a big eye opener for me. That I was like, yeah, I think Dr. Baker's right that I need to go to UCA. So the next time I had come out was for my audition, and that one I didn't spend as much time here, but I did get to get a better idea of what campus was like and what kind of ensembles they offered. I remember I stayed with we had another a tuba major from Morehead State the year before me that had graduated. He came to UCA, so that's why I was like, oh yeah, I guess that if you go to graduate school from here and you play tuba or euphonium, that's just where you go. So Sam Tuttle is his name. He's one
Yeah.
of my best friends. You know, I was the best man at his wedding. You know, he and I text every day. He's great. We still keep in touch. Right now, he's getting his DMA at Michigan State with Phil Cinder. So he's doing great things up there. But I had a he was showing me around. I remember whenever I had first got to town. Whenever I was here visiting as a junior, I didn't really get to see a whole lot of the ensembles perform or anything. And the first thing he took me to was the trombone choir was rehearsing that evening in the band room, and it was incredible. I'd never heard a collegiate trombone ensemble sound like that, or at that point in my career, I don't know if I'd ever heard a trombone ensemble sound like that. I was like, those are students. Like, okay, that's exciting. So it was cool to see this other university 700 miles from where I was coming from that had had the same feel, but seemed to be just doing it the next step, the next a little at a higher level. So yeah, I came to UCA. Um, I started. I had an assistantship in the jazz area since Dr. Gail Robertson was running the jazz area at that time. I auditioned for the jazz band. I was lead trombone. I got to direct the jazz band a little bit, which was a lot of fun and some great experience. I had never had any experience leading a big band before that. And I remember the first time she was out of town, she was like, "Oh, I'm leaving town Monday. You got to run jazz rehearsal." I was like, "What?" I was like, "I don't know how to run a jazz rehearsal." So it was a lot of fun and really nerve-wracking trying to figure out, okay, let's just think back to everything I've ever heard a jazz director say, and I'm just going to steal all those quotes and just use those. But it was a lot of fun getting to define my own directional voice and say, well, oh, well, here's what I think we should do here. And a lot of I'm a product of Gail Robertson. A lot of what I say directly correlates with her line of thinking and exactly what she would say. But a lot of the times it doesn't as well. I think of things differently than her sometimes, which is I think what makes us such a great team at times. We get two totally different thinking styles of how to approach these things, and a lot of times the way she would do it is best, and some of the times the way I would do it seems to work better. But it's been really valuable getting to work with her both as a student, then as a staff member, and then as a faculty member. I've learned a lot about the ins and outs of how these things work, and I've grown really close to Dr. Robertson and learned a lot about how she thinks and how she functions. So I think that's part of the reason why she entrusts me to help out with the studio or the jazz bands or anything whenever she would be out of town, just because we were kind of on the same wavelength as far as our way of thinking and how those things went. So, I learned a lot about being a professional and just being an adult in graduate school. And a lot of that was because of Dr. Robertson. A really valuable one for me was, I had conducted the jazz band at a concert, and I thought I did a great job. And I was like, man, that went really well. And first thing she's like, why didn't you acknowledge the soloists? I was like, oh, forgot you do those things. So I was like, again, I was totally naive to these things. And yeah, that's just lots of learning experiences and things like that where things that I had seen done countless times but never had crossed my mind to do, like acknowledge your soloists or how to talk in between tunes or how to acknowledge the audience. I didn't know how to do any of those things. I'd seen people do them my whole musical career, but it's a lot different when you try and go up there with just the knowledge of what other people have done, and then you're like, oh man, I'm totally winging this. This doesn't work. I have to prepare for these things. So, some people might have those skills, but I did not. So it was it, I learned a lot about how to how to function just as a person. Without a doubt, though, and I preach this to my students all the time, especially at this point of the year when it gets busy, the most important thing I learned in graduate school was time management. It changed my life. Doing homework the day it's assigned rather than the night before it's due. Um, Getting up earlier in the morning to practice and study so that you didn't have to do those things in the evenings. Um, I dealing with primarily freshmen and sophomores. I hear a lot of, "Oh, I don't have time," or "I wish I had more time." I'm like, you have all the time in the world. You're just not using it correctly. And this year is the first year I've had a student really take what I've said to heart. And now he's getting to the music building every day at 5:30, 6 a.m. He's showing up early and he's studying and he's practicing and he's using his evenings for himself because he's getting all of his required necessities done during the day. And he's staying ahead of his homework. he's getting it done the 2 days before it's due rather than having to stay up late to finish it. And he's like, wow, I just feel so much better. Like I can go to bed at 10 p.m. and wake up early, but still get enough sleep. It's like, yes, these are things that I also came to terms with and they changed my life. I'm trying to help you. So, time management was the huge thing for me because I was terrible at it. I was, I'll be the first one to admit I was not a great student in my undergraduate career. It really took me getting to graduate school to mature and get real with it and really accept the fact that this is a big part of my career here and I can't take it for granted or just mess around with it. I got really serious about it and it seems to have worked for me. I'm in a pretty decent spot now, but
Who did you
had I
learn it
not,
from?
a lot of it was um things that Stacy Baker had told me that I just didn't take all that seriously at the time because I thought that I probably thought in some way that I was different, that I could just, get by and I couldn't. I was not a great student. I did not have a great GPA. Um, you know, I had I had music classes that I didn't do well in and things like that just because I wasn't studying and things like that. But I got to graduate school and realized like probably week one when I got 20 hours worth of homework for one class that I could not get by doing what I had been doing in the past. And it was a real reality check for me to have to sit there and plan out my time in 10-minute increments from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day just to sit here and, well, on paper, here is my entire day and I can get it all done if I stick to this schedule. And creating that schedule and learning how to stick to it and complete your tasks within the confined amount of time you've given yourself, it I tell my students it's an art. It's not something you can just tell yourself you're going to do and do it first try. It's trial and error. You will put on your schedule, you're going to leave yourself an hour for homework, but your homework actually takes 2 hours. Or you tell yourself you're going to wake up early in the morning, then your alarm doesn't go off. you know um there's so many different factors that can play into the ability or the inability to manage your time. And I think that the sooner that you learn how to master time management, the easier your entire life will be. I had a conversation with one of my students a couple weeks ago. He had come in for his lesson at seventh. He has a 7:30 a.m. lesson, bright and early. Um, I'm usually there by 6 a.m. so I can warm up and do my things because if I start my day at 5 a.m., when I get home at 6 p.m., I don't really want to practice. I have to do that in the morning, or else it's probably not going to get done. So, he was talking about how much harder his sophomore year is, how he's not having as much time to do his practicing. um, me and Dr. Robertson were teaching him in tandem, and we were both assigning him etudes. We were both assigning him like 2 or 3 etudes a week, and they were tough. And he's like, I am drowning in this work. So, and I was like, well, here, let's back it off a bit, but let's also look at the possibilities of what you can do to make this easier on you. I was like, well, where are you struggling the most? And he was like, I just can't figure out what to do with my time and how to get through the day and get everything done. And there's this incredible video. If you've never seen it, I highly encourage you to look into it. It's Christian Lindbergh, the trombonist. It's his daily routine. He has this video on YouTube, and he lives 2 days in every 24-hour period. He goes through his whole daily routine twice every day because he manages his time so well. He wakes up in the morning and gets coffee and he exercises, he practices, he does score study, he sends his emails, he does another exercise routine, he practices again, he has like a relaxing lunch, and then he takes like a 30-minute nap and he does it all again. And by the end of the day, he's got 4 or 5 practice sessions in. He's got 3 hours of score study, 2 hours of administrative work. He's done 4 workout. And it's like to see this all laid out in a video where he says, at this time I do this, and at this time I do this, and at this time I do this. My student's jaw was on the floor, and he's like, how does that work though? I said, because he's managing his time. He is allowing himself a certain duration of time each day to do his specific tasks. And once you stick to them and you find a routine that works for you, write it down, keep it, do that same thing all the time. I have more or less the same daily routine every day because it works for me. I have a full-time job in our music office, and I'm required to teach, and I'm required to work up my own personal music. I realized I couldn't do those things in the evening because my job in the music office is mentally draining. I get home, I'm tired, and my practice sessions aren't as meaningful or valuable to me. But in the mornings is when I can get all my distraction-free practice in. Um, it's when my brain is waking up and I feel that I can absorb the most information. So finding that for me, I had to change my daily. I used to be a night owl. I used to be able to do all my things at night and stay up late. I didn't need as much sleep as I do now. I was young. So, I was telling my students, I used to, on average, I'd give myself like 5 hours of sleep at night. Like, why? I said, well, because that's really all I needed. I could wake up at that point and be like, yeah, I can still get out of bed and get some coffee and not feel like I'm going to die at some point randomly in the middle of the day. So, um, but now I'm on the morning side of it, like waking up at 6:30 every day for an 8 a.m. job just got me used to waking up early. And it's like, well, why don't I just wake up earlier? I was like, I'll just wake up at 5 and get there by 6, and then I have 2 hours before my workday starts to do my own practice and my own extended warm-up time and my own teaching. And I get all that done before the day even starts, so that by the time the day is done at 4:30, 5:30, 6 o'clock, whenever it might be, that I'm more or less done for the day.
And
So
not to mention that you can spend time with your wife and your family and have that set aside just for them.
exactly,
That's
it is it's an art form managing your time, but if you can sit there and figure out what works best for you, it is the most invaluable thing I think you can personally ever experience about yourself in your life. If you can figure out a routine for you daily that maximizes the time that you have, the time that you're awake to get as much done as possible, you will be successful in whatever endeavors you find yourself in, I think.
That's amazing. That's a great way to wrap up this segment with Cole Cavanah. And next time we'll cover his experience with Dr. Brian Bowman at UCA during the low brass workshop. Yes, I brought that up from the podcast segment.
Oh
And
yeah.
we'll cover that because we haven't quite dove into a lot more experiences that you've shared with us on previous episodes, just little
Mhm.
tidbits. So, with that being said, everyone, thank you so much. You can find more on Cole at your leisure at www.internationaleuphoniumsummit.com/Cole-Cavanah. Thank you so much for tuning in. And be sure to check out Cole's channel and as well as subscribe to the Euphonium Summit channel here for more information on our cohorts, including Cole and Dr. Gail Robertson and the over 50 plus cohorts we have currently on our summit. Thank you so much, everyone. Cole, thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks.